Welcome to the Success is Subjective podcast series brought to you by collegealternative.org, presented by Lilley Consulting. I'm your host, Joanna Lilley. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Josh Flaherty, about as Irish as it gets, right? Josh is an adventure recovery lead guide, an avid outdoor educator, and he brings 15 years of experience as an executive in the entertainment industry to his expertise. Starting at William Morris Endeavor and then serving as a top manager and marketing executive at 10th Street Entertainment, Josh managed numerous multi-platinum recording artists including Blondie, Motley Crue, Papa Roach, and Steven Tyler. Simultaneously, he created and implemented multiple integrated cross-marketing campaigns for recording albums, tours, books, and many other events with companies such as H&M, LVMH, Marc Jacobs, Gucci, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Major League Baseball, and the Smithsonian. Josh has a passion for recovery and mental health, and his career and clinical expertise in the field fulfills his calling. He began as a client with Adventure Recovery in 2018 and progressed through AR's guide training program. Josh is actually the first person in AR history to transition from client to guide. Josh received his Master's of Social Work from Fordham University, and his experience and contacts in the recovery community, the entertainment industry, and corporate America inform the breadth and vision of the work that he does at AR. As executive director, he manages operations, staff supervision, and participates on the executive team, driving strategic growth and development. Also, in case you missed it, episode 183 with Tim Walsh, you want to go back and check that out because Josh and Tim actually work together at AR. But let's not wait any longer. Here's Josh. Okay, Josh, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for carving out some time to actually be sitting in front of a computer.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm super excited. So I was just saying offline that I kind of remember of the Cliff Notes version of some of your emerging adult experiences, but I'm super excited to kind of dive into hearing more. So let's just jump right in and actually you tell the listeners, where did you grow up? And then what was the messaging that you were receiving kind of in the community in which you were raised, as well as from your parents about post-secondary education?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a fairly affluent suburb of Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri being the city, even though my little suburb is in Kansas, people are always sort of questioning, Kansas, Missouri? Anyway, I lived in Kansas. And the messaging around post-secondary education from both my family and the school district that I was in was that college was unquestionably the next step. There was no other option. From a very early age, it was made very clear to me that post high school graduation, I would be going to college, and it was competitive in my school as to who could, get into the sort of elite colleges. I went to public school, right? My high school, my graduating class was around 500, but, the top, 5 to 10% of my class, myself included, went to, notable universities. So that was my story. Both my parents went to undergrad and graduate school. My mom actually went to undergrad at the school that I ended up attending for undergrad. So yeah, it was there was no real other option.
And that I guess you were technically considered a legacy then, right? Because you're going to the school.
I was considered a legacy. Yeah. And eventually, if my kids want to go there, there'll be a double legacy. So that, all that stuff came into play for sure.
We'll talk about your transition then, because obviously you kind of set us up. You ended up going to the same school for undergrad that's where your mom graduated from. So what was your transition into college life like?
I had a good amount of freedom, I think, as a junior and senior in high school, and I've talked about this in my, I guess, in my recovery story, right? That as long as the outside, it didn't really matter what sort of the inside looked like, and I was really good at making the outside look good. Really good grades, popular, athletics, all that stuff, right? And I would drink in high school regularly, use drugs in high school regularly, but get away with it, right? And that was the transition to college. Like there was no sort of, I didn't struggle at all. Like I was ready to leave home. I was ready for the independence, right? I wanted to get away from the Midwest. I ended up going to college in Boston, and I wanted to be in the Northeast, and quickly found my group of friends at college, right? That we stayed group of friends from the beginning of freshman year all the way through senior year. Joined a fraternity, like kind of did the whole that route. But same in college, right? It was like, as long as grades were good and it looked good on the outside, everyone would sort of keep their eyes off of what was going on behind the scenes.
And I feel like you're kind of teeing us up. Like at some point, there's got to be this like exposure, right? Of like, oh my gosh, what's happening on the inside is like really not matching what's on the outside.
And I don't think I was ever adequately prepared to deal with that, And yeah, I mean, it took, like, I was able to maintain that kind of double life for a number of years, but eventually that collision happened, and it took a lot to reconcile that and to overcome that, and that's been a lot of the work I've done in recovery still to this day, right? Now having some good sober time under my belt, but dealing with that duality of, am I really being authentic in like how I present myself to the outside world?
Yeah, like actually having to be totally in touch with like what's going on in the inside too. That honesty is hard sometimes to acknowledge. So did you make it all the way through to graduation from college, and or like did this collision take place?
No, 100%. I graduated magna cum laude from college, got into the entertainment business after college, and worked in that industry. First started in television and then moved over to music, specifically like music management, and worked in that, arena for a good 10, 15 years. First time I went to treatment, probably, I was 33. So that's 12-ish years post-graduation. And that was, from then until I finally really, got a hold of things. Went to treatment, several more times. But yeah, I mean, I was able to kind of dance that dance for a long time and was very successful doing so. I mean, I had a really successful career in the music business and managed some very high profile artists. And it was, again, as long as it looked good on the outside, like it didn't matter that I was, drinking constantly and amongst other things, right?
Yeah. So back to the story. I think it's actually kind of interesting because I would say the majority of the guests that are on this show will talk about how that transition, right? Those emerging adult years, really like 18 to 23, 25, whatever. Usually the hiccups take place during the college years, like, oh shit, it gets so serious. But every once in a while, I do get somebody on the show that's like, I managed to make it all the way through to graduation, and I also had a career. I was thriving, or at least from the outside, it looked like you're thriving. So I appreciate you being honest and just talking about like this. I think is also the parents' vision, right? Of like, you have not just a college student who goes to college right after high school, but you graduate in 4 years or soon after, you get a career, you're self-sufficient, and parents are like, look at my kid, right? Like they're fantastic.
Yeah, made it.
Right. Yeah. Which is like, but you're saying it's such a facade. So oh man, let's jump into then like what happened, because you were kind of alluding, you went to treatment a few times before it finally took. So let's actually talk more about kind of the meat of that, not so much the treatment experience, but what were some of the employment changes during that time? Because I'm assuming, well, I think it's fair for me to make the assumption you're not in the music business anymore. Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think I want to sort of go back a little bit to just I think really high school and collegiate environment I was in, which was sort of success looks like this, right? Success looks like lots of money and power and prestige, and people know who you are and you run in certain circles, right? And I bought fully into that. Like I wanted that and I chased that and I got that. Lived in Manhattan, really nice apartment, house in the Hamptons, the whole thing, right? But I was not fulfilling anything meaningful for me in terms of, I think, like my core values, what really filled my soul as a person, And yeah, and as I leaned heavier and heavier on substances to cope with the discomfort of those feelings and other, areas of my life, I went to treatment a couple times, still maintained, the job I had. As things got worse, I switched companies a couple times, but still in the music business. And I was so dedicated to that life that it was like, okay, going to go to treatment, going to fix myself, going to dive right back into the environment that I at some level know is unhealthy for me, but like it's so wrapped up in my identity. It's so wrapped up in like who I am that I can't see another way beyond going back to this, and I would look for ways that I could justify that. Oh, well, this person's in recovery and they're in the music business and this person. So like, I can do it. It can be done. The reality is like, I just couldn't, and it was a harsh reality when that set in, but I was so broken and in such need of help. My addiction progressively got worse and worse, right? Really escalated to, some pretty dangerous behavior. That I finally hit that point where it was like, I have to make like a complete full change in my life. And it just so happened that around that time when I had left, the music business, I was going, through a longer treatment environment that I want to say luckily, but I think that it may have something more. There's more than luck involved. Like I got exposed to Adventure Recovery, which is the company I now am the executive director of and part owner of. And growing up, being in the outdoors was important to me, right? Like I loved just being outside, and we went on a lot of like family trips to national parks and hiking and all that. And I loved that stuff. And when I found that reconnection, I really just took a chance of like, hey, I want to be a part of this. I have no idea what that looks like financially. I have no idea what that looks like from a career standpoint, but I just want it. And it worked out. And I think I used that drive and ambition that I had in my previous career, but in a much healthier way in this career,
Well, and it's such a different pace, which is what I appreciate about adventure, any type of experiential or adventure based activities, is that it really is the premise is like, not just the environment and the experiences, but a lot of it's reflective. And so I think it actually goes back to your piece of just like, the mask that you were wearing right on the outside definitely didn't reflect what was going on the inside. Any type of adventure recovery or adventure therapy type activities, like it's impossible to not be honest and real in those moments. So I'm gonna like, let's do the spotlight. Okay, tell us about Adventure Recovery. You just said like, I'm the executive director and co-owner. Like, that's so cool. What does that look like?
It looks like the dream that I like sort of never knew I wanted, So Adventure Recovery is, we're an organization started and based out of Connecticut. We also operate in Colorado. And we do adventure therapy, experiential mentoring, outdoor education, really on and I'll use this term sort of loosely, on an outpatient basis, right? Clients aren't living with us, but we're meeting with them sometimes once a week, sometimes several times a week, to do adventures of their length of choosing. It could be a half day, which is like 3 hours. It could be a few days out in the field together. We work with individual clients, we work with group clients, we train individuals who want more skills in the outdoors, especially as nature is, in terms of nature as a recovery pathway. And, it's just so fulfilling to see the lights turn on for so many clients that I think a lot of times have been labeled treatment resistant, or this modality didn't work and this modality didn't work. And I get it, because, a lot of, like, I've been in a lot of traditional therapy, and it can be intimidating to sit in that room just directly across from someone, look them dead in the eye, and open up about, your deepest, darkest, whatever. And I was really good at avoiding that. Right. But getting into adventure-based activities in the outdoors, like you're talking about, like it strips those barriers down, right? It forces you to be vulnerable. It forces you to trust your guide or your mentor or your coach. And the really human connections that can form very quickly are just amazing to see. And everyone on our team, from founder on down, has a recovery story and identifies with a recovery story. And to be able to sort of stand next to your client and be like, I understand what you're going through, right? And I've been where you're at, is a really powerful thing.
I love that. Okay, so you kind of already alluded to this before, at least like what your initial vision was of success and kind of this, what you were doing, striving for it. So knowing your journey up to this point, right, all the twists and turns, I'm just going to ask you this point blank. Do you see yourself as successful?
I see myself as so much more successful than I think I've ever been. And it looks incredibly different than what I thought it was going to look like. Is adventure recovery doing, really well, and are we growing really rapidly? Absolutely. Right. Does that mean I have the same sort of like financial return that I did in my previous career? Like, absolutely not, but on a day in, day out basis, I am so much more fulfilled. Right. I feel like my work has meaning. I am passionate, like truly passionate about the field that I work in. And so, for anyone out there that thinks success is narrowly defined as, a financial material thing, it's like there's such a broader definition. And as someone who was trapped in that box and now has been able to get out of it, it's incredibly freeing. And it speaks further to that, connection of the internal and the external, right? Because the previous way is only defined by external things.
Okay, so if you could give one piece of advice to, let's say the example is like this kind of like, career-driven early 30-year-old that's really struggling, which is, again, also outside of the box of usually the advice that I'm giving is like that young adult, but you can also change it. Open to interpretation how you want to answer this. But if you could speak to somebody who's struggling in some capacity right now, what advice would you give them?
Give yourself the time and wherewithal to take a very honest step back from where you are and really assess kind of what all the signs are pointing to. Because it's so easy to get, I think, trapped in the moment and in one certain way of doing things. And another big piece of advice is listen to those around you. Trust the people that care about you, because certainly along the way, there were a number of people who would ask me, like, is this really the right career? Is this really the right fit? Are you happy? And instinctively and without even thinking, I would be like 100% yes, because I wanted that to be so. But I never really considered the question on a real level, So I think try to be as self-aware as you can and listen to those that want to help you.
Yeah, I think it sounds like that's in hindsight, you kind of wish that you had taken some steps back and really, really, really been honest about like, okay, you're asking me this question. I'm not just going to immediately go to like defensive, but also convincing, right? Like, no, of course, this is exactly what I want. And meanwhile, you're like,
right. And everything's fine. And
of course.
That the word fine like scares the hell out of me, because that's like when someone says that, it's like, because I used to say it all the time and still catch myself doing it, but it's like an immediate red flag of like, not okay.
100%. I say the same thing. The acronym for fine is what, like fucked up, insecure, neurotic,
neurotic,
and emotional.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get the same. Any like, yes, every alarm bell or red flag goes off when somebody's like, I'm fine. I'm like, oh yeah. Or the comic of like the dog in the burning building, right? Where he's like, are you sure you're okay? Like the house that you're in is literally burning around you. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Like, okay.
Everything's good. Everything's good. Yeah. And for those, and it's so much further complicated by, like in my case, if you're struggling with substance use, right, you're leaning heavily on substances that are altering your mental state, right? So even if I like wanted to have that honest assessment of myself, I don't know that I could have done it. And I hid my troubles and my addictions for a very long time, and I hid it really, really well. Being good at hiding an addiction is not success, and I kind of equated that it was.
Wow. I feel like that was like a mic drop moment. Like truly. All right, this is the last episode of this podcast ever, because Josh literally just like, yeah, you said what needed to be said, which is like look, this is what success doesn't look like, and that's how your life is. Like something's really wrong. Woo. All right, well, let's end on that note. So how do people connect with you?
So they can go to our website, which is adventurerecovery.com. They can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all the other social media channels. Adventure Recovery is our handle for everything. info@adventurerecovery.com. Email address will eventually get to myself. And as I say, like we have teams in the Northeast. We have a team in Colorado. We have eyes on expansion to other territories. And, our goal is just get more people outside, and get them exposed to the magic of what happens out there. I think, we as a society have become so disconnected from the outdoors, and we were not designed as a species to spend 8, 10, 12 hours indoors, in small boxes with fluorescent lighting. There's a reason we feel better when we go outside, and the more people that we can help get out there, the better. So.
Well, we'll make sure that all the links and email addresses are in the show notes. And I always end by just thanking the guests. Like, so Josh, obviously, thank you for not just like coming on the podcast, but being willing to share kind of your journey. Because I think there's a level of vulnerability and exposure that sometimes, even though a guest is saying like, yes, I'll be on your podcast, then there's kind of the question of like, how real do I get? And so I just appreciate you for being really real. And I always say too that, somebody's going to listen to this, whether it's a young adult or a parent of a functioning addict in their career, who's going to listen to this and really need to hear it. And I hope that they reach out to you, whether it's to just like seek some support or even just to say thank you for sharing your story, because I needed to hear it and it hits a little too close to home right now, but hopefully that kind of sets them on a different trajectory.
I hope so too. And just, thank you again, Joanna, for doing this and all the amazing work you do in our field. There's the really good people in this field, right? And you're definitely one of them. So just super grateful to have the opportunity.
Shucks, thanks. That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. I want to thank my guests for joining me on this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it wasn't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for the next episode where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guests. And also put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email me at Joanna, Joanna, at successissubjective.org. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please do me a favor and subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to Success is Subjective on any other popular podcast apps such as Amazon, Audible, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. And last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener supported, made possible by me and by you. You can show support for the continuation of this podcast by donating on the successissubjective.org website. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.